So, hi everyone. And thanks, Miriam, for the intro and the presentation, and thanks, Rethink, for the invitation to be here today. The topic today is huge and time is limited, but a bit of a background on top of what Miriam said. When you've done design for more than 20 years, there's bound to be some turnkey moments in your career. And for me, I highlighted this, not because, well, obviously, I'm a service designer by background, so Steve Jobs' iPhone is typically somewhere up there. But it's not because of the killer UX being presented in 2007. This is the moment when, in my career, I realized that what is it that makes some companies able to do this when some companies have real trouble trying to replicate that experience. And it's not in the capabilities, it's not in the design, if you may, it's not in some of those, it's in something totally different. Because obviously Nokia tried to do exactly the same thing, following up on Apple's footsteps, and the Steve Ballmer quote here, I think, kind of sums it up. We didn't do anything wrong, but yet somehow we lost. So from this point on, about 2010 onwards, my career navigated towards advisory and strategic roles in trying to help companies and individuals and instances figure out what is it that's turnkey and how can service design skill set help in this. Now, if we think back on the last decade, I think that this quote sums up pretty well what we're seeing. Uber owns no vehicles. Facebook produces no content by itself. Airbnb owns no premises. Alibaba has no inventory of its own. I wish I could attribute this quote to myself, but no, it's Tom Goodwin, and an awesome thinker in the turf. But this kind of sums up how many instances are operating right now. We have moved past the stage of it's not just the UX, it's not just the phone UX or something like that. It's something bigger. Should we investigate our business models and so on and so on? And we all know, hopefully within this room today, we all know that the great service experience is obviously a differentiator between two companies or two instances offering the same. And I've been advisory and strategic roles throughout this period on different places, but mostly for global clients. And I'll try to echo some of these items today. And what I've called this past decade has been the age of services. It's been more or less like this. Companies aiming to replicate in their service portfolio something akin to this image, like something of this leisure. Yes, let's make it effortless and nice and something that people will remember later on, that they were super comfortable with. Except not anymore. So I need to be slightly blunt with this one. Yes, we have lived in this age of services, but now it's the time when things have become really vastly different from the past 10 to 12 years. The reasons we all know, and these are things that we talk about probably if not every day, then I would imagine every week. Depending on or irrespective of your turf and your job description, you end up talking about climate change, you end up touching on the pandemic, and of course you end up talking about the ramifications of the war. And these are vast things impacting every single working entity, every single society currently. And any one of these items alone is like enough to cause a tremendous amount of changes. But when we combine the effect of all of these, and these are more or less going on simultaneously, we have something really big going on in the footsteps of what Tom Goodwin said. Something big is happening. Now, before anyone throws anything at me and points out the obvious that change has always been about, yes, change is constant, particularly for businesses. Businesses are in a constant flux of, oh, this one more, oh, who would have known? So there are always things bound to happen. But right now, the combined effect of this is tremendous acceleration. And this is seen, or how I experience this, is as uncertainty where previously there was certainty when I speak with business people or respective decision makers in organizations. And to give it a bit of like flesh to the bones, I'll give some examples. There is a business runner in Finland that I know of running a business of about 2,000 to 3,000 people, depending on how you count. And he said with all candor that there are so many regulatory changes affecting us right now that we've worked with sustainability, ESG items, and then there's a GDPR thing, but right now there's also an accessibility law, EU-wide, affecting us. And we've done a lot of good work, and we've got tons of brilliant people working on this, but in all honesty, I'm not at all sure whether we're really prepared for this. A company in Finland was recently fined 600,000 euros when the Chinese owner decided to just copy the user database to China as well as a backup because they broke GDPR legislations. So regulatory environment affects everyone, every single company, and it creates a lot of friction. Another person quoted that I'm not at all sure on when I look at the circular economy models popping around in startups around us in our field, that if we can scale, I don't know. And this coming from a person who previously always has known. So sustainability, GDPR regulation and legislation items, they create a lot of opportunities and threats. And then circular economy has vast power to kind of shift entire business models at the same time. Okay, more examples. I was speaking to a C-level person at a toy company, a global one, and they said that they actually need to revamp their operating models, the way they do their business, the way they run their business, faster than ever. And he admitted that the way we do strategy is totally different. We had to reinvent that as well. And frankly, the strategy right now is to just evolve and see what comes out. And this was at the height of the pandemic, when they were thinking what to do with all those premises and all these people and all this hybrid working. And that too has caused another big shift, if you may. So it's more difficult than ever to attract talent, because guess what? All of us employers are also fighting over the same talent. And it's also really difficult to figure out which is the key talent to keep. Is it the new guy who talks about AI constantly? Or is it the CTO who's been our stable backbone ever and ever? Because the uncertainty caused by the operational models and processes renewing at the same time as this kind of competition for the workforce is going on, it puts real pressure on business decision makers and movers and shakers and societies to figure out what needs to be done. I'll keep on adding on to the pile a bit, so don't worry, it's going to get worse. The same C-level person from that toy company said on a really frustrated note later that, look, there was a room full of consultants, us over their advisory capabilities, talking about what they should do. And this is now with the war impacting them. And said that, look, if any of you are going to talk about innovation at all, I'll throw you out. What I need right now is results in 3 months. This is turnkey and kind of stunning because this might lead us thinking like, is there something wrong with your business? Well, obviously there is if you need to sell parts of it on a span of overnight and figure out what to do with premises that are on an area which you can't access anymore in a country that's poor. And the same economic uncertainty puts pressure on the top leadership, and people get silly briefs like this. You need to be on calculus 20% more efficient while letting 30% of people go. This is also a reality. So the economic pressure felt by everyone is real. It creates a need for rapid results and also halts many long-term development tracks. And there's a need for generating more revenue with less resources. So those are examples of briefs, or examples of conversations on where I can see the uncertainty kind of pop up. Okay, let's not stop here because that's depressing. So let's figure out ways, or these are things that I know that we as designers, engineers, I don't care, I tend to call everyone who works in a modern organization designer anyhow, because that's the way it should be. We need a design mindset. But there are 4 key approaches that alleviate this, or the problems caused by these. The first one is called stop fighting silos. To expand on this bit, we all know that services are done for silos. And I need to expand on the silo part. It's an organizational unit. We designers typically tend to talk about customers and client organizations that, I wish it wasn't so siloed. It's really difficult to do something for the marketing because then later on IT comes and kills it. And that's even before finance comes and kills the IT. So in a sense, it's always this question of who do you work for? And then in this picture from this airport, when we're asked to design the ticket vending machine on the white pin drop, then we might do a stellar job, utilize all of our service design capabilities, prototype it right, research it right, test it right, and it might result in an awesome ticket machine, the best on the planet. A shame that anyone can find it from that airport, because the rest of the experience is broken, or it's disconnected from the user experience in other channels. And then it feels off-key, and even if it was the best ticket vending machine on the planet, we won't get there. So we people experience the services across these silos, not in a singular one, not in the one that ordered it from us. So my key point is that through this uncertain time, we need to work more than ever across organizational silos. How to do that? Find ways on whatever it is that you're working on to align your project's KPIs, so key performance indicators, metrics, whatever it is. Find a way to align those with other silos in that organization. Try to understand what it is that the financial department really wants. Find a way to understand what's the possible ramifications and KPIs that the IT is working for, and bake these into whatever it is that you're working on. For many of you, this is self-explanatory, but for those who this still bears repetition. This means that, this is for some a bad word, designers need to get cozy with profit and loss kind of thinking. There are many design-oriented people who don't want to consider euros and conversion and average revenue per unit kind of things. No, you have to. This is key. It's in a designer's mindset to understand the commercial viabilities of what you need doing, whatever it is that you're doing. Last bullet point, if you need to find out the other silos KPIs, take out the entire structures strategy that you're designing for. If you're working for the government, that's a tall ask, but you need to do that as well. So you need to figure out on what is the overall target of this entity, what I'm designing for, and bake that into whatever it is that you're designing. And if you do this, you'll end up using experience as a driver that drives across an entire user journey, across an entire path of something. And then people in the organization start to see the value for this. I mean, the decision makers, if you may. Co-creation and business design are the main skill sets needed here, obviously, in addition to service design. So I'm taking that for granted as an approach. But on top of that, you need to build this. Second, yes, I'm asking you guys to become a legislation advocate. This is also key, because the GDPR, accessibility, ESG legislation changes are vast and huge, but they're also available, both on market level and EU-wide. The problem is that the minute you find these, you will get a ton of Word documents, and you will start to go, okay. So the problem is that it's really unclear, and there's a lot of it. Now, to help this a bit, you need to identify within your project context on which is the most pressing of these three key areas that might impact it. Typically, it's either accessibility or GDPR if you're designing something with a user interface, but it also might be something that's bigger, that's on the ESG side of things, touching on governance items and social items. And my last piece of advice for this is particularly for ESG. Don't even think for a second that you, particularly if you're working for or represent an entity, if you're not a dedicated ESG expert, your expertise, no matter which amount of reading, is likely not going to cut it. You seek help. Seek partnership. Find consultants to kind of help with these, because the risks are tremendously big. Key statement. Disregarding these angles makes you lose in the long run. I gave you an example of the fine that was given to the Finnish company. Guess who was to blame? Consultants. Why? Because they built the project and they neglected to tell the party in Finland that copying this data over might actually be problematic. And don't look at me, I wasn't one of the consultants. But that's inevitably the case. The risks become big. Why do I say makes you lose in the long run? It's because there are bound to be the people among you who start to work with these. And those who read up, those who kind of get the legislation things and keep up with these times, they become better designers. And the better designers tend to also kind of gravitate towards, like, they get chosen to assignments. They are the partners that the customers want to carry on with. So strong sentiment. If you don't work with these, you're going to lose, because also the party that you're representing is going to lose if they disregard these angles. Third point, I'm trying to be fast to make it in time. Dive into process design. This might be for some really a strange thing, but due to the economic pressure, many entities are not looking to develop any kind of innovation work right now. Nothing new is kind of good, because we need to focus on efficiency, or they need to focus on that. They're the ones thinking that, okay, we need to downsize this much and get this much more efficiency. Fortunately, for designers, there is an actually really great turnkey solution that you can do. And this is that you start to work on business processes. So stop innovating, and target efficiency by starting to work on business processes such as, okay, how does your customer service process actually flow? How does it work? Let's investigate the process itself. And the minute you start to do this, you start to also expand onto other areas, because you realize that that's tied to actually the ordering process, that's tied to this and this and this. And how you can work on this is actually dusting up some of the skills. Particularly service blueprints tend to be super underappreciated. And in modern times, everyone just goes directly to customer journeys and thinks that they will make them happy. You can dust up those skills. And that's actually super viable when you work with business processes. It's a good way to map out how an organization works. And also, in the interest of time, I'll give you a teaser. Google up customer journey operations, or ops. Not now, later. This gives you an insight on how big organizations should work consistently with customer journeys, and how can they build business models when they maintain hundreds of these at the same time. If you work on business processes, what this enables you to do is to go into something really boring feeling or sounding. ERP and CRM projects. Hands up everyone whose lifelong dream is to work on ERP and CRM projects. Good. No one. This means that these are actually the big projects that will never stop. These are the projects that actually clients need to build no matter what the economic pressure is, and when there is one, these are the processes that they will do, or projects that they will do. Working on these projects is long-term and huge, but if the people working on these processes also contain, or they have design capabilities, that they can produce user experiences and UIs out of these things. You were silent already, but I was kind of hoping that that would be the strong, palpable silence. Yes, that's the key. That's how we as designers build first the processes, and then we end up building the experience. Design alone is not valuable. What design skill set enables is super valuable, and the process design is a very good example of it. If you combine this skill set with core business problems, rather than the obvious outward-facing ones of user experience, then you start to get to places, and you actually, in this time of economy, you help the clients, but probably also your own employer. If you want to know where to start by investigating standard process design. Combine whatever it is that you do for a living, if it's a service design skill set, UX skill set, start to work from there, and it starts to kind of unravel. This is particularly important for agencies right now who are facing downsizing. Final point, embrace AI, artificial intelligence. It's this close that artificial intelligence could be on the top 3 lists of major changes right now, but I chose to incorporate it as a tool still here. It is evident, hopefully, to everyone in this room that AI is something that will change the way we work, but we need to understand that it will also change it in a much more vaster scale than just the ChatGPT's user interface, because that's just text analysis of these. But what we can do with it is all sorts of things. All these, if you may. It's a tool that has revolutionized in half a year more than has happened in our industry on a span of several years. And they say that it's only starting. My advice, replace Google with ChatGPT for now, and then use Google to validate your end results so that you don't end up being silly. But you can also read up on the N plus 1,000 articles on the topic, because guess what? LinkedIn is filled with AI experts nowadays. Every single other person is one, but this is also, try giving these AI articles to ChatGPT and ask, can you find a common denominator between these? And then you'll start to get to place. In project context, figure out ways on where AI can replace manual work when you work on a project or whatever it is that you're doing. Key points. It affects substantially the way we should work, not how we work, but the way we should be working. This is key. And do not limit yourself to just producing the same items faster. You can consider that you can now deliver at scale. Yes, this is an example of copy. Yes, here are 7 examples, different tonality examples of all of the copy in the same time. Also, realize that AI can do things that are done in hours than just us puny humans. My key point, design is a much needed skill set right now, as it helps our customers to form a cohesive market-driven picture, which is like the risks become front heavy and not back heavy. So you're kind of pulling the risks forward in a business context by utilizing design. And our clients will have more confidence using design when design is being used than they have without it. Alone, design is not vital, but it can produce the input that companies are now lacking, and maybe that will give them a tiny bit more certainty. Thank you.